The best of Money Matters. The Hot Seat.
Welcome to the Hot Seat, a debate segment where ideas clash and insights spark. I'm your host, Hongbin Jeong. Now, in a world where LinkedIn profiles, online portfolios, and personal branding are more important than ever, some argue that the traditional resume is outdated, but others believe it remains a crucial tool for landing a job. So, are resumes becoming obsolete, or are they evolving with the times? As such, we're tackling a question that's been gaining traction in the modern job market. Are resumes still relevant today? Well, before we hear from our guests and dive deeper into this debate, here's a disclaimer. The views and arguments presented by our interviewees do not necessarily reflect their personal beliefs or opinions. Instead, they are here to provide a fresh perspective on the topic at hand. On that note, if you'd like to send some questions in for our guests as well, feel free to WhatsApp us at 88550893 or leave a comment on our YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook pages, as well as we're currently streaming live on those platforms. Do search us on those platforms at Money FM 89.3. Now, without further ado, joining us today to defend the relevance of resumes is Samuel Leow, who is from the Rebel Framework. And on the opposite end, we have Sam Neo, who is from Stories of Asia, who will be providing to us why exactly a resume is no longer necessary in this day and age. Welcome to the Hot Seat, gentlemen.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for having us.
Well, let's start off our debate here to dive into this topic by getting you guys to share your own personal experiences when you applied for jobs and how you prepared your own resumes. Samuel, maybe we can jump on with you.
Sure. So I'd like to start by sharing a little bit about my own journey back in 2017. That was when I was undergraduate and I was looking for jobs. So I think this is a story where it really impacted my view on resumes, right? And so back in 2017, I was applying for graduate programs. I had applied for 10 and I only got one callback. So that was really poor hit rate, so 10%. But after I saw a career counselor, she gave me this advice that still stuck with me till this day, which is that even if I'm a great candidate, if let's say there are nothing to show for it on my resume, how would companies look and find me, right, among the hundreds that apply? So I took that advice to heart. I took a year off school. I took 2 6-month internships and then eventually I applied again for 10 graduate programs and this time I got 9 callbacks. So 10% hit rate in 2017, now 90% hit rate.
Right.
And so on today's topic, if you're asking me, right, are resumes still relevant? To me, it is. And I am here to defend that position.
I see. What about you, Sam?
So interestingly, 2017 was the end of my corporate career. So at that point in time, I was a little bit lost in some sense. I was looking for jobs. But it seems like when headhunters are reaching out, they were reaching out for similar types of roles. So I couldn't quite break the mold out of government-linked companies. And that was the point where I started learning about personal branding. That was a very foreign concept that came to me. And I left corporate to become entrepreneur, been 7.5 years since. And over the course of the past 7.5 years, I've been getting job offers without updating my CV, been getting opportunities to work with large multinationals that I've never thought about working with. So to me, personal branding, it's something that's more valuable, and that's where I'm taking the stand today. Yeah.
I see. Well, with online platforms such as LinkedIn and letting potential employers see an individual's work experiences, why is there still a need for a resume, Samuel?
Yes. So unfortunately, there are no strict standards to how you maintain a LinkedIn profile for each of us, right? So there comes this idea where you still need a resume because when recruiters do their job, right, their job is mainly to find candidates to share with hiring managers.
Right.
They need a resume just to share it with them, right? So the need for a resume comes from their work processes rather than from using LinkedIn as an online platform. So for me, I feel though, if let's say there's a strict standard where people are able to update their LinkedIn in a standard whereby everybody can follow, I believe that it will actually help. And so for me, it's like when I give advice to students, 3 things that I tend to tell them, right? So I use the PIE method. Photo, introduction, experiences.
Okay.
Right? So on your LinkedIn profile, if you optimize it this way, I feel that resumes may no longer be relevant. Right? So your photo, it must be a professional photo. Try to do a full body shot, not too noisy of a background. Introduction, so there's this about section on your LinkedIn profile whereby you can include a paragraph of who you are as a person. What I tend to tell people is like introduce yourself, how you normally introduce yourself in an interview.
Okay.
Do that and put that inside that about section. Last but not least is experiences. LinkedIn is ultimately a database of candidate profiles, right?
Right.
So recruiters go on there to search for people. So as long as whatever you have in your resume, you should as well update it onto the experience section so that it's easier for recruiters to be able to find you. Yeah, so to me, if people follow these 3 key rules, which most don't, I believe that yes, LinkedIn can replace. If not, the resume still pretty much stays relevant.
Okay. So when you do apply for roles today, I mean, a resume is still required to be submitted through the respective portals as companies still use, the applicant tracking systems. Well, if that's the case, Sam, why are people moving away from resumes?
I'll see that resumes are kind of static as compared to profiles like LinkedIn profile, for example, that is more dynamic.
Okay.
Right? When it comes to articulating your value, these days when we talk about recruitment, people are looking at a few things, right? I mean, we talk about KLT. Since he has a PI, you have a KLT, right?
Okay.
K is being known for something. You want to be seen as an authority, a go-to person in a certain space, right? So for example, in my case, I'm in branding, HR, so that's the space I want to be known for. L is being loved, right? In the CV, typically you focus a lot on achievements from work perspective, but they don't quite see you as a human being. From branding perspective, we always say people buy people. People want to buy you because they like you, they love you, before they give you the opportunity to say, what can you offer them? And last but not least is being trusted, right? Trusted means that you're associated with people of credibility, you have certain things to show that you can deliver beyond or upon promise in some sense. So for me, the value of platforms like LinkedIn is more dynamic. The stories can connect not just at a rational level, which people tend to make more emotional decisions, but at a deeper emotional level through storytelling, which is where I see a lot of value actually.
I see. Well, it looks like studies show that skill-based hiring is the norm, with 73% of companies in the world already using skills-based hiring in some form. So then what role does a resume play in the hiring process, Samuel?
Yes, so firstly, let's address what skills-based hiring first for the audience. Skills-based hiring is basically, in simple terms, instead of looking at the past experiences of what you have done, they're looking at the skills and capabilities that you have accumulated over time, right? So in terms of saying to do skills-based hiring, the assessment methods are actually quite difficult and it's expensive to do, right? So one good example that I can come up with is that Pymetrics, right? So this is a company whereby they give a game to a candidate, you play a few games and then a profile is created for a candidate. When it comes to administering this for companies, it's actually very expensive, right? So there are 2 ways to do this. It's either companies do it themselves, so they create a game on their own, or they create an assessment method on their own, or they hire a company to do it. And because it's very expensive for the company, it's important for them to have like a first filter of who should I send this assessment to, right? And so for many, if let's say they receive many different applicants, it's therefore important to shortlist who you would hire in the first place, right? So you're trying to get out people that you will not hire. So as an example, so I talk a lot about graduate programs. So in graduate programs, you are targeting undergraduates, right? So if on your resume, you have a graduation year that is like from 2 to 3 years back, I should filter you out, right? I should not waste money to put you through the assessment.
Right.
And so I think this is where a resume still comes into the picture because it's an important first layer of filter that companies use in skills-based hiring.
I see. Well, according to another study done in the UK and US, 49% of Gen Zs use online job profiles, with 33% of them using personal websites. So in such a fast-paced world, Sam, wouldn't applicants without a resume be kind of at a disadvantage, given that there's more to review when comparing it to a traditional resume?
I would say these days is a lot about standing out, right? Because with the rise of AI, it's so easy to generate a CV or resume that looks so good, that looks perfect in some sense. So I would say that from a recruitment point of view, right, we tend to be more skeptical these days, where yes, we screen through keywords through the ATS system and stuff, but we do check the social footprint of the candidates as well. And that's why I would say the social media part of it becomes very important, being able to show the X factor through interesting personal websites, personal stories, being recommended by people. These are things that help to stand out, actually, I would say.
I see. Well, there's also a growing trend over the recent years where companies prefer to hire individuals who are flexible and possesses the ability to adapt to the rapidly changing workplace. So, Samuel, isn't a traditional resume not enough to, showcase the above-mentioned characteristics?
So I must say first, I must admit, I'm here to defend the relevance of a resume, but I admit that statement is true, right? It's actually very difficult difficult to assess things like flexibility, adaptability in a resume alone. Usually, if a recruiter wants to assess such capability, it has to be followed up with like interviews or different like rounds of hiring managers' interactions. And so, to me, I feel that the point of a resume can actually help you elevate these skills in an interview. Okay, so let me give you an example. If let's say I'm an undergraduate, when I graduate, I would be able to do 3 different internships, right? So this is how I would showcase adaptability and flexibility through a resume. I will take a government agency internship. I will take FMCG, so fast-moving consumer goods, and then maybe thirdly, pharmaceutical company on my resume. All right. So my aim as an undergraduate would be I want to showcase my capabilities in terms of being flexible and adaptable. Right, so this is how I will frame it in an interview. So now I'm in an interview. I have these 3 experiences on my resume. This is how I'll say it, right? So in a government agency, I learned about hierarchy, right? It's important for me to learn how to manage upwards, and I learned the importance of structure. In a FMCG company, it's focused on agility, creativity, and pace, right? I learned the importance of doing things quickly, but at the same time being daring to challenge the more of how things are originally done. Lastly, in a pharmaceutical company, I learned about low risk-taking behaviors. This is where I learned to be extremely detailed in what I do, because a small mistake could end up having a large impact, right? So as an intern now, this is how I would say, throughout all these 3 internships, I'm given substantial projects and thus I am flexible and adaptable. So can you see like how if I was intentional and very intentional in the way I put experiences on my resume, I can elevate the skills in an interview. So to me, it's like, I would say the resume is still required in order for you to showcase such skills that are very difficult to measure just based on a resume alone.
I see. Well, having said that, companies do appreciate the fact that applicants are indeed creative in how they present themselves. Still, isn't it easier though, for applicants to use a resume as they can update it and tailor it to the respective job applications, as Samuel has just mentioned, Sam?
You rightly pointed out it's easier, but easier means you can't stand out. It's more difficult to stand out, right? So for me, like I said, back to the main point is, in today's day and age where it's no longer a local market competition, people can work hybrid, they can work fully remote, it's a global competition these days. And if we look at it from a Singapore perspective, competition is no longer just from local market, not even from just Malaysia. It's global, where people are hungrier, they typically don't mind being paid less in some sense for same role. So I think that's where you have to start articulating the value. And I think with something more dynamic, like platforms like LinkedIn, like your personal website, it allows you to showcase more than just skills. I'm not discounting the importance of skills. If I look at it from a recruitment standpoint, there are 2 things we typically look for, right? One is obviously the competency element, which has to be present to do the job. The other element is then the personality, whether or not it fits the culture. So you can't see the personality and culture, or in Gen Z's terms, the vibe, right, through the resume. But through video content, for example, through things like, your website and stuff, people can tell, have a sense of how this person operates, what's the personality like, and whether or not this person potentially fits in. So I mean, even from resume point of view, right, taking away the traditional style, we see more and more resumes being very beautified, decorated in some sense. It shows personality. And that's why we're trying to talk about how the traditional CV, where it's just about keywords, it's just about past experiences, no longer makes the cut, in my opinion.
I see. Well, on one of the realities of being part of the workforce is also how AI is effectively making a major change. So I have a question for both of you here. In your opinion, is AI actually making it harder for people to apply for jobs? Samuel?
Yes, so I have 2 perspectives to share. I think one perspective Sam has shared earlier as well. So from the perspective of maybe coming out of a resume to do it, now it's so easy, right? I can simply put into ChatGPT or Google Gemini, make my resume majestic, right? It will suddenly sound majestic, right? They'll craft it in a way that it's majestic. The other perspective I have is then, as a candidate, when you're applying to a company that uses AI, then I would say it's becoming more difficult.
Okay.
Because one thing that we must say is that, one question I get a lot from students is that if a company uses AI in their filtering process, does it make it more fair or unfair? Right? So to me, fairness is only measured if I know the criteria that the outcomes are determined based on, right? So in other words, if I know how and what I'm being judged upon, I can determine whether or not the outcome that I get is fair or not, right? However, when companies start using this term AI, a lot of times they hide behind company secrets, right? This is done by an algorithm. So a lot of times you don't know why or how come you got rejected, right? And therefore, I feel like there comes this opaque layer where, as candidates, when you're trying to apply and you keep failing, you're going to feel quite demoralized, and it actually makes you feel like it's actually very difficult to apply for jobs nowadays.
Right.
So from that perspective, I feel then it's difficult.
What about you, Sam?
I would say I see it as a two-part kind of equation, right? One is then it's probably easier to apply because if you know how to do the right prompts or that the model answers are out there. And Singaporeans are great at getting model answers anyway, right? So I think that's part one. But it's getting more difficult to secure the job. Meaning, right, when you use that model answer out there, what happens is it sets an expectation. But very often these days we look at people being overly reliant on AI, which means that they're unable to articulate or unable to kind of showcase what they really reflect on the CV, which is overly perfect. Even interestingly, recently I was talking to one of my clients, right, doing the CV and stuff like that. He writes really well, and the feedback was this AI generated? You see, there's a lot more skepticism in place these days. So to me, it's how do you bring the human element, which is probably the challenge these days, and while you get through the door to get an interview, are you able to back it up through your communication skills? Because it's easy to showcase and make you look good because of all the generative stuff out there. But ultimately, people buy you as a person when you communicate, when you showcase the vibe in that sense. So I think that's the part where it's getting more important, in my opinion, the AI age here.
I see. I mean, we spoke about how, AI is making it easier for us to write a resume. We can literally just ask ChatGPT, hey, can you write me a resume, right? But of course, companies themselves, they use the AI to kind of filter out some resumes here. So, Samuel, how can we beat AI in its game and make sure that our resume kind of stands out if, AI is kind of like the first barrier of that kind of you going to the next stage?
Yes. So I have 3 tips here. So one is format, structure, and content, right? So the first one is on format. I think it's very important for people to realize that AI or technology may be lacking in certain ways. And so the first thing that I would say is when you know AI is being used in an applicant tracking system, try to submit Word documents over PDF, right? Do not beautify it too much. Try not to use overcomplicated designs because sometimes it may not get read properly. Second is then structure. Structure your resume in a very proper manner whereby you have very clear headers, one word, hopefully, one word, try not to mix too much. So it would be, an example would be like experiences, skills, right? Try not to mix it like skills and languages because this may confuse the technology into mixing up whatever you have put on your resume. Last but not least is content, right? So even AI needs some reference from you to come up with summary about you, right? So it's very important then to be able to paraphrase your pointers inside your resume such that you are putting more information about yourself and try to paraphrase it such that you're capturing many keywords across different experiences on your resume. Why is this so? Because at the end of the day, once an AI gets a fuller picture of you, they give the company a better summary of yourself, right? So this is how I would say you should try to beat the AI at its own game.
I see. Well, I have a similar question here for you, Sam. So if, the company that you want to apply for uses AI, and of course you don't want to use a resume because resumes are not relevant for you, and you show kind of a personal branding, a website, won't AI be like, this is not right for us and just put you aside?
What I'll do, so I'm just setting a context here, right? I'm assuming that these are professional roles in that sense because generally professionals use LinkedIn, right? I wouldn't go through the regular route to apply for a role. I'll start looking at who are the people working in that company on LinkedIn and assuming I have a decent level of personal brand, right? I'll reach out to these people to say, would you mind sharing more about the company? Would you mind doing recommendation? And assuming these are people who are already connected, it makes it a lot easier. I would say, like I said, these days, because of AI and everything, it's easy for us to submit. It's getting flooded. People can submit customized, resume very easily to many companies, but it's getting more and more crowded in some sense. So how do you stand out using that personal brand in a sense where you're leveraging on relationships, leveraging on something that's more powerful these days, which is trust. We talk about trust factor. If someone is working there, someone that knows you, is willing to endorse you, it makes it so much more powerful and skip you past that AI gantry, basically. So I think that's something that we should all consider.
I see. And just to wrap up our interview, our debate segment here, starting with you, Samuel, I think a lot of people are very curious on how to make that perfect resume, right? I think the top question is how much information you have to put. If you have so many experiences, how do you put that into, should you have 2 pages? Or is it 1 page? Is it 3 pages? What is, the right criteria to make a resume?
So for me, I think there is no right number of pages.
Okay.
I always follow 3 principles. The first principle is that everything important should go on your first page, right? So even if you have a 3-page, 4-page resume, it's fine as long as the first page contains whatever that is most important.
Okay.
So when I say that, it's like when I'm applying for a role, specifically maybe like a marketing role, I'll make sure that my marketing experiences are floated on my first page. Right. Second principle that I follow is that in terms of structure, like I said earlier, I would clearly build structure in the sense that I would have clear headers. I would not try to make things too complicated in order for me to have a resume that can be, number one, read by AI or technology, or be attractive to recruiters who are reviewing it. And last but not least, I think my last principle is that there is no perfect resume, and thus, whatever you hear on the internet, or like even from me right now, should not be followed as like the ultimate way, right? Your main job is to get into the company. And so like what Sam said, I said that I do advise to students, because my audience are mostly students, that you have to look at other ways on top of your resume in order for you to get in, right? And so it's important then, like what Sam said, as much as we are on the opposite side, I agree that as like society changes, it's important to start building a personal brand online such that it helps you, right? It aids you in other ways of getting into a company.
I see. And finally, Sam, you're on the opposite side here, and you believe that personal branding is more important than a resume. So what is key to building that persona and your personal branding, and what's really important? Do you need to have a website, or what's kind of like the process here?
I always fall back on one of the key phrases that I always use. Good attracts good. So my clients, my students always hear this over and over again. What this means is then you want to start with a good intention, to put out good thoughts, do good things, and put out good value in the market. At the end of the day, people buy you. They want someone that's likable, someone that has a good vibe. That's number one. Number two, when you consistently do good and put out good value, people see you as someone of value, and you become more attractive in the sense where I want to hire this person. And these days, beyond that competency bit, there's increasingly what we call the personality hire as well. So people look at beyond that competency, they look at X factors, which can come across as, having that good element, that good vibe, which I think is getting more important. So I think regardless of what persona we're trying to shape, right? At the core of it, are you showing that you're a good person that people love to work with? Are you someone that's putting out good value that makes you an attractive candidate? And ultimately, it's about finding that unique combination of yourself. It's better to be different than better. So that's my closing advice, actually. Yeah.
I see. Well, thank you both for joining me today.
Thank you. Thanks for
you.
having us.
Thank you. We've been speaking to Samuel Leow, who is from the Rebel Framework, and Sam Neo from Stories of Asia. Thank you to all those who tuned in live on air as well as live on our social media platforms. Tune in again next week for another Hot Seat. I've been your host, Hongbin Jeong.
To listen to more great interviews, download our podcasts at audio.sg or download the audio app. That's AWEDIO, audio at the App Store and Google Play.